WCNC Charlotte. This is Flashpoint, where power and politics collide and the tough questions get asked and answered.
Thanks for joining us here on Flashpoint. I'm Ben Thompson. Retail space here in the Queen City is largely booming, but there's still an unsettling trend in a growing city. Several major spaces in Charlotte defaulting on their loans. The latest victim, Carolina Place Mall. It joins a growing list of properties across Charlotte, including the Epicenter, Northlake Mall, and Uptown's One Wells Fargo building, struggling to make ends meet. Joining us now is Chuck McShane. He's the Director of Market Analytics at CoStar, looking at office and retail trends here in the Charlotte area. Chuck, thanks for coming on Flashpoint. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so give us an idea, some insight. What is sort of the state of retail space here in Charlotte right now?
Well, the broader retail market is healthier than it's really ever been. We've seen record low vacancy rates because we haven't been building much new retail since over the last 10 years. The big exception is the mall space and some of the ground floor retail space that's in your more urban areas. So it really has been impacted by shifts in where we work and where we shop and how we shop. So while neighborhood centers, smaller format retail has thrived, you're seeing, and also your high-end malls have done quite well, and outlet malls have done quite well. It's your Class B, sort of middle of the road malls that are struggling a bit.
And I would assume a lot of this has been completely upended by the pandemic.
Yeah, I think office to a greater degree. I think retail as well, though. We obviously saw an increasing share of retail sales happen online and also happen closer to where people live. So goods that could be purchased online, there's no need to go to stores for those anymore unless there's some sort of differentiator. So either there's some sort of luxury that you can't get somewhere else, there's some sort of customer service or customer experience that you can't get anywhere else. And so that's driven more retailers to focus on experiential retail, things you can't get online, and that's pushed them into smaller retail spaces closer to where people live. People are spending more time in their homes as well, so they want to shop closer to where they are and not necessarily get in the car and go 30 minutes to spend a day at the mall. They want things that are closer to home.
And you mentioned the malls, and we've seen major malls, office buildings default on their loans everywhere from Pineville to Uptown. Put it in context for us. What does this mean for these spaces as well as the broader market?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two things that are really impacting those defaults. Number one, interest rates. They've doubled essentially in the past 3 or 4 years, and that's impacting all commercial real estate. And then the impact of where we're shopping and how we're shopping is leading to lower occupancy in those malls. I think to some extent, as those malls reach their maturity date, for their loans, and are not necessarily having the income coming in, that rental income that they were relying on when their malls were full, we're going to see many of these either go into foreclosure, go into special servicing, where they'll try to work out some sort of deal. Potentially these malls will see their values decline. And at that point, there can be some opportunities for buyers to come in and purchase the malls and potentially at a discount and potentially change the tenant mix, reposition them in some way. For others, there may be some redevelopment potential down the road. But overall, I think the Charlotte markets, because of strong population growth in the Charlotte market, overall retail is doing quite well. It's just these properties are going to have to reinvent themselves or reposition themselves for the future.
How empty are some of these places?
Well, it depends. It depends on how you look at them. I would say overall that we track a mall retail vacancy of around 15% overall, and that includes some full malls like South Park and Concord Mills, and so higher vacancy rates in some other areas. Really, the challenge is when an anchor tenant leaves, that can spike your vacancy rate pretty quickly, and then the smaller spaces tend to go along with that. So retail vacancy rate in the Charlotte market is around 3%. Mall vacancy rates are closer to 12 to 15% overall.
And what does this mean though for other places, unique places, sort of like Queen City Quarter, former Epicenter, in Uptown? I know they're hoping to change sort of the makeup of that complex, But what does this mean for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the office market is really impacting what's happening uptown as well. So any place where you have lower foot traffic is going to have to reinvent themselves in different ways and find new ways to attract people. So I think a lot of those that College Street corridor, because of a lot of the older office space that's there, that's also in trouble and also defaulting on some of their loans. That's a longer term play. You have to find ways to get people to spend more time there. That's not the office necessarily. So focusing on more events, focusing on entertainment, and potentially bringing more residential uses there. I think that's a longer term possibility for those sort of urban retail markets.
You talked about how the Charlotte market as a whole is doing well from a retail standpoint, commercial standpoint. But when you talk about that urban core, Center City, I know that they've talked about making more of a neighborhood, more of a place where people live, not just work. How optimistic are you that things can turn around and do better than they're currently doing?
I think that's a good question. I think longer term that there is some opportunity there. I think it's going to take a while to sort out. Again, if you come here I'm sitting in Uptown right now. If you come to Uptown when there's an event going on, or some other thing that's drawing people here, it's as vibrant as it's ever been. The challenge is you have the loss of foot traffic during the day. That's really impacted the retail centers here. So anything and that goes along with what I was saying about how retail is thriving in the suburbs where people are living, where people are spending more time. It's also thriving in urban neighborhoods like South End, where you had the apartments come first, you had the residential come first, and then the office followed. I think Uptown is going to have to find a way to bring more people there, to get more people to spend more time there. Residential wise, that's a longer term process. I think more events, more entertainment, more things to bring people into the urban core. I'm optimistic that can advance some of the retail uptown, but the residential is going to be a longer term play.
Gotcha. And give us a broader view as this as well. How is Charlotte performing compared to other cities?
Well, so on the retail side, we're doing quite well. Again, we're one of the strongest top 5 in terms of retail absorption in the market as a percentage of our inventory. So more demand, more space is being occupied than is being vacated. On the office side, demand has basically been flat. So we've had certain buildings that have thrived, that have taken a lot of the demand, taken a lot of the leasing, and then we've had older buildings that haven't been able to perform quite as well. We came into the pandemic with one of the tightest office vacancy rates in the country. That's basically doubled since then, largely because we built a ton of new space. We built 8 million square feet of new office space since 2020, and at the same time as that office demand flattened out. So the new buildings took all of the tenants, all of the new demand, and we didn't have many companies coming into the market to backfill those older spaces. And so that's where the office market is struggling. So our vacancy rate right now is middle of the pack, around 13% office vacancy, up from 7% before the pandemic. But if you look at the rise in vacancies, we're actually one of the top 10 markets for increase in vacancies since 2019 when it comes to the office sector. So you have really 2 office markets. You have one that's thriving in the best new buildings, and then one that's really struggling.
All right.
In buildings built before 1990, uptown, the availability rate's about 35%.
Yeah, some of the older buildings. Everybody wants to be in the new fancy buildings. All right.
Exactly, and wants to be places where there are other things to do, where there's an ecosystem of retail where you can live, work, and play, and that's why South End has thrived.
Exactly, which makes sense. All right, Chuck McShane, Director of Market Analytics. Chuck, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, more Flashpoint after this.